All right, so we're live at CCFBG Garage. We have our special guest with us today, Scott Settlemire, aka the FBODFATHER. Scott, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. It's been a long time since we've talked. It was good kind of catching up in the back room there and just talking about some stuff that we would normally talk about and whatnot. How have you been, buddy?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
Enjoying retirement.
Well, that's good. After 40 years, I would hope that you're enjoying retirement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. So we have somebody in here. We are not officially skunked, Scott. Okay. So I'm gonna hit some hard questions.
Okay.
Nothing too difficult that you couldn't answer, but so you're with GM for 40 years. Congratulations, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've all in the Camaro community have missed you since you've left because it's put this big void where we're used to seeing the FBODFATHER at auto shows and whatnot, and looking forward to that whole experience. And yes, eventually you have to retire, and we understand that. But how did Scott Settlemire get involved? How did the career go in GM where you finally got into the Fbody program?
Well, what happened was I had gone to Northwood University with all intentions of owning my own dealership. And when I got out of college, I didn't want to go to work for the family dealership. I wanted to go to work for another dealership just because there was so much family in, my uncle's dealership.
Right.
So anyway, I went to work for Devereaux Chevrolet, which is about 30 miles from where my uncle's dealership was. And I went to the airport to pick up my parents, my father was the general manager of my uncle's dealership. And they had been on a Chevy trip. And my father is all grins, and he comes out and gets in the car and he goes, "You're going to work for General Motors." And I went, "No, I'm not." He says, "Oh, yeah, you are." I said, "No, I'm not. I don't want to work for a big corporation." Well, he went ahead and had almost every business owner call me in the next week to tell me that I needed to do this. So I went in to see Bill Devereaux, the dealer that I was working for. And I said to him, "Hey, this opportunity's come up. Chevy wants to hire me as a district manager." And Bill said to me, "Oh, Scott, that's a great." He says, "Think about this. You're going to get all this experience by watching 20 different dealerships, and you're going to learn a lot." And he says, "And learn everything you can. And then when you decide you want a dealership, come back and I'll put the money up to put you in a dealership." Well, I very quickly realized that a small town dealership isn't going to be around because, we finally approved dealers owning multiple dealership points. Mm-hmm. So 40 years later, I retired. Now, I can remember the first Camaro I saw was on September 10th of 1966. Back then, God forbid you should show any vehicle. You had to hide the vehicles. And in fact, through 67, we actually covered the vehicles with covers when we shipped them. And we had gone to my grandmother's, and that's the first time I'd seen a Camaro. It was a Bolero red Camaro RS convertible. And I was absolutely stunned by how beautiful it was. And I've loved the car ever since. In fact, my mom always drove Camaro demos until she had grandsons, and then she had to drive celebrity wagons for a while.
Right.
But Mom is 97. She finally stopped driving when I pulled the keys when she turned 94. And I still have her 2010 Inferno Orange Camaro RS. It's in her basement, but she doesn't have a driver's license anymore because she's got dementia. And I had some doctors tell me it was just probably not a good idea to let her drive anymore.
How is she doing, Scott? How is she doing? Is she doing okay? Aside from, considering that she's got dementia, is she doing okay overall?
Days and bad days. She came down 2 weeks ago and said, "When are we going home?" And I went, "Mom, we are home." Yeah. And she looked at me like I'd lost my mind and says, "Well, how long have we lived here?" I said, 1973. Right. So she has good days and bad days, but mostly bad days. She's still at home. I have a woman come in and get her up in the morning and get her breakfast. And then she gets physical therapy 2 times a week. And then I have another woman come in to get her into her jammies and put her to bed.
Right. So I mean, it must be. Oh yeah, her car's at her place still. Okay, but you have the keys. I was gonna say, it must be a pretty big garage you have because you still have Thor, do you not?
I do. In fact, Thor in her car or in her garage, and my 2002 Camaro is stored in a barn, a very nice facility actually, about 5 miles away. And then my daily driver's a Cadillac, and it's in my garage here.
Nice.
But I go see my mom every day for about 2
years. And I know you've put some stuff up on Facebook. That's why I was asking, because I know, that she was having, some problems, and I remember us talking, right? So like I said, it's been a while, right? Your mother's an awesome woman for, her part in all this and whatnot. How did you get involved with, so you're at GM now. Okay. How did you get involved with being so involved in the Fbodies? Is that something that you wanted, or?
I've always driven Camaros. And of course the position came up for assistant brand manager for Camaro Corvette. Okay. And I posted, and there were 568 other people. And my boss was getting pushed to hire a minority. And he finally said to them, look, if you want a minority, fine. But Settlemire knows Camaros like nobody.
Right.
And so it was a 6-month wait, and I got hired into becoming the assistant brand manager for Camaro on the Camaro Corvette performance car team.
Nice.
And then, of course, when the Camaro was going away, they said to me, okay, we need another job for you. So how do you feel about auto shows? And I said, I'd rather drink Drano, thank you. And they said, well, how do you feel about Centers for Expertise for Chevy Trucks? And I said, and what is that? And they said, you write and proofread the owner's manuals. And I went, I love auto shows. And it turns out the auto show job was the best job I've ever had. Because what happened was I went to my boss as soon as I got the job and said, I'm going to peel a small portion of my budget off to support the Camaro Firebird enthusiast community, because the car will eventually be back.
Right.
And he said, okay. So he let me do that. So, I mean, a lot of auto shows I would go and I would post online, look, come to the show. If you want to meet afterwards, I'm meeting people in the lobby of the Marriott Hotel where I'm staying, and 50 people would show up. Then I decided, okay, how about if I do an early morning breakfast in Philadelphia or New York? So we would hire caterers to come in, and the show organizers would let us bring 150 to 200 people in. We did it in Cleveland. We did it in Philadelphia. We did it in a whole bunch of cities.
Right.
And let them go through the GM exhibit. So it really worked out very well. And then, of course, I started working on the 5th Gen Camaro. I was voice of the customer for that. And in fact, I'm the one that proposed the Camaro Disciples. And
I know. I think I knew that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a little upset that I wasn't invited to that, by the way, but I won't hold it against you. No, I'm just kidding. I think I did know that, and that was a great group that was put together, because
what I did is I went out to like 5 different websites and posted, Chevrolet is working on a new vehicle, and we really need to know customer input. So send us 250 words or less on why you would be a good candidate. We got 850 or so applications. Here's the scary part. I knew all but about 8 of them.
Yeah.
But I didn't pick them. I just simply sat down with Cheryl and John and Todd and all those people and Al and explained. And, there were a couple people that they proposed, and I said, that's probably not a good idea.
Yeah. So, Chris was part of that group, was he not? Frezza?
No, his partner Jason was.
Oh, yeah, Jason. That's right. Yeah. I knew one of them was.
Well, basically, we said, look, we want women and men. We want all age groups. We want all generations of Camaro. we also want Firebird input, and I want a couple Corvette people. So we called them the 12 disciples, of which there are 15.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, it was a great thing. And of course, we made them sign non-disclosure things because we took them to the proving grounds every 3 months.
Right.
And they gave us incredible. But I got to tell you something. A lot of what they did had more impact on the 6th gen than it did on the 5th gen.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah. Because we had already, there was a lot of things you couldn't change in the 5th gen early on.
Right.
So what they were giving us feedback on, we applied to the 6th generation car.
Which is interesting because you weren't involved in the 6th gen car. You
I was.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. No, you had retired after it came out.
Yeah. Right. 2016. Okay. June of 2016.
Yeah. Okay. But the R&D would have started in 12, 13?
Yeah.
Right? So, what was I going to ask you? This is what happens when we chat, and then I get all tied up on what you're saying, and then I forget my question.
By the way, do we have anybody on here?
Yeah, we got 2 on here. We got 1 question. Can you see the chat? Because if you can't, go up to the top right box where it'll say comments and all banners. I don't know. It'll say there's 4 boxes on the top right corner. One which should say comments. If you click on that, you can see the comments.
There we go.
So I'm gonna put up where's the dollars comment and a question in a second. But if you want to, if somebody says, hey Scott, how's it going? You can type in chat while we're going, right? So,
okay.
But I'm gonna put the questions up so you can answer.
Okay.
So, that's what I was gonna say. So, where's my? So, I know for us, certainly it's a lot different up here than it is in the States for, obviously car shows. I mean, it's almost like you guys have one every week. You know what I mean? And I'm a little envious of guys like Matt at Lethal Garage because they have like sunshine 12 months of the year and we're stuck doing car shows from May to September, right? So
you mean enthusiast car shows versus new car shows?
Right.
Okay.
So now I'm going to pivot and go to new car shows, right? Okay. So for us, I think after we started doing indoor shows, it was about 2007, and then we got our first invite to the Canadian Auto Show, and that was in 2009, and that's when the red shell, it was just shell only, was at the auto show here.
Right? We called it the foam, but
yeah. So. And that's when we started to get, you and I started talking, I guess, a little bit from, it would have been June prior because you were at the OCC Nat show. And that's when I think we finally met, it was in 08 or 09 or whatever. And thanks to you, I mean, the toughest part for me was trying to break in with GM Canada, right? Because, really TFBM, at the time was just starting to dissolve and OCC had always been popular, right? So we were kind of the new kid on the block and we were still trying to prove ourselves, right? Well, by the time, 07, 08 rolls around, we're the size of OCC and we do both cars, right? So, which, I'm not bragging, trust me. I mean, my nerves were shot because I was like, I never wanted this to be big. I wanted it to be comfortable, right? This was more about, how we started as 6 guys at the coffee shop, hanging out, learning new stuff. And then all of a sudden, boom, we're 300 members. Right. So thanks to you and some of the conversations we had, you kind of opened the door for us to be more involved with GM Canada. And we got a lot more recognition in the sense of, okay, now there's 2 car clubs in Ontario. There's not just one. Right. In a sense of, big, they were just Camaro and we were Camaro and Firebird, which I'm going to talk about the homecoming later on. But so I wanted to show you.
By the way, who is Camaro Octane Zeta? It says Camaro disciple checking in.
I don't know. I don't know who that is. Octane Zeta. Does Scott know you? That was one of the. Whoops, where are we? There we are. That was from.
By the way, that's worth a lot of money.
I know it is. That's why it's still sitting on my shelf. If I could put it up there with, where are we? If I could put it up there with the other one. Anyways, I don't know. Octane Zeta's not talking.
I sent him a note.
Oh, okay. Richard, howdy, Scott. Good to see you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's Tim from Chicago. It's Tim DeYoung.
Oh, okay. I know that name.
Yes.
I know that name.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, I got a little off track there. So okay, so you're doing auto shows, and yeah, so for us, I mean, we were a lot more involved with GM Canada, and when the auto shows rolled around, we would help. We would volunteer time to come and explain. Certainly with the Gen 5 when it first come out, right? Because it seemed like we knew more about the cars than the people that were hired to market them, right? Which was funny because they kind of said, "Man, you guys know a lot about the cars," and we're like, hello. I mean, that's what we do, right?
So the problem is, I only did the American auto shows. I had nothing to do with Canadian auto shows,
right?
But I got to tell you something. I was very, very specific in teaching our product specialists and our product presenters everything about our automobiles, because when you went to an auto show, I wanted the cars to be the stars. So I was very, very particular. And in fact, I've never gone to another auto show once I lost the job. So
I can't remember the company. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Gale and Rice.
Sorry, who?
Gale and Rice.
Yeah, I thought there was an acronym name for them. But anyways, doesn't matter.
G&R?
Who?
G&R?
Oh, maybe. No, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I thought it was something else. Anyways, they could be different. But so that was 2009. That came in. And then it's funny because I was trying to figure out how I share pictures and stuff. So I had a picture of one of the PPV cars that were at the Canadian Auto Show. It was a black 1LT. And it's funny that the car I had bought was almost identical to that, except mine was a 2LT RS. Right? But same color, black, you know what I mean? So, hey, Opportunity. Thanks for joining us. Richard, thanks for joining us. Octane Zeta.
Tim DeYoung.
Finley, where's the dollar? So we're going to get where's the dollar's question up here. And he has got what happened between GM then and now with Camaro?
I don't understand the question.
I think what he's trying to ask, and maybe we'll get him to specify what he means, is what happened with GM then versus now and the Camaro. And I think I noticed it when that Gen 5 car come out, it was like there was so much hype. You know what I mean? Like,
I got to tell you something. The day I walked into the design studio and saw that car in 1/3 scale clay,
right,
I had chills and I almost started to cry. And I knew it was going to be a hit. Now, when we unveiled the car, if you'll recall, it was at the same show that they unveiled the Charger, the Challenger. If you went over to the Dodge display, you could hear crickets chirping, and you could walk right up to the Challenger.
Yeah, you couldn't
even get into the Chevrolet display. Yeah. So that's, and of course, I convinced GM to allow 300 people to come to the unveiling. I wanted to make it 1,000, but they said, no, we're going to limit to 300. So we did a big presentation. I had everybody at the Heritage Center the night before for a cocktail reception, and we bussed them down to Cobo Hall and really made it a big event. So.
Okay, well, wait a sec. Here's his update question. They, GM, have not marketed the Camaro in years. So, and I think Where's the Dollar and I were kind of going back and forth in one of my videos about the perception is, you've seen all kinds of marketing for Gen 5 cars, right? Even up to
You
14,
really do.
15. Now you don't see anything.
Well, first of all, we have done no advertising to speak of in the last 2 years because we have this thing called the pandemic.
Right.
And we didn't build a Camaro for 7 months
Right.
because we were saving the chips to build our more profitable vehicle.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, and that's fair. And you know what? Listen, I mean, if you watch some of my videos, it seems like I'm hammering on the guys, and I'm not. And I said guys, I meant GM in general, right? I think you've known me long enough now, Scotty, that there's no bigger person who supports the brand and the car and than me, right?
right.
And I realize that the last 2 years have been hell for everybody. It must have been hell for the guys on the floor. It must have been hell for everybody, because it's not like they want to sell these cars. It's not like they don't want to sell these cars, right? They want the cars out. They want, they want these guys to enjoy them.
Mhm.
But, when you have limited resources, you have to take those resources and apply them
Right.
where you know what I mean?
But you
People
know what?
look at it and go, well, whatever. It's more profitable. Well,
I
no,
got to tell you something. We haven't advertised the Corvette, and we haven't for years.
Yeah, that's true. That's very fair.
We're basically putting the marketing dollars behind the most profitable vehicles. Now, Corvette is by far the most profitable vehicle that GM makes, but we make a small fortune on Escalades and Suburbans and Tahoes and Silverados and Sierras. So that's where we put the marketing dollars.
Right.
Now, when I
Now,
say we, I'm retired, but I'm still part of GM.
I get, and you know what? Listen, you gave a good portion of your life to this company, right? Of course, you're always going to be part of GM. You put your heart and soul into that company for 40 years, and everybody who knows you knows that.
Yes.
Right. So I get what you're saying, right? I'm just going to put down his. I'm going to get rid of that. And sorry, guys, if I'm a little behind on some of the questions here. So
Team Findlay has an interesting question. Was there any element that you were really pushing for on the 5th gen, but were denied, but it ended up getting on the 6th gen? Well, first of all, the disciples told us that we needed a power seat on the passenger side. Somehow we missed that completely. Now,
yeah, I think about
we
that.
didn't build a 2010 with a passenger power seat. And here's a little tidbit. Guess how many sensors are in a passenger seat in the 5th gen Camaro?
10?
A couple hundred.
No kidding. Wow.
And the problem is you have to re-crash test the cars, because the worst thing you can have happen is having an airbag not deploy. So,
wow.
That's what happened. Now, there were a lot of things. It's interesting because we actually got more on the 5th gen than we did on the 6th gen.
Right.
Interestingly enough, I had some disagreements with engineering because I thought they were being a little, let's say, aggressive on pricing, which means they were charging a lot for the car.
Right.
And some of the engineers said, well, but we have a superior product. And I said, yeah, well, the jury's still out on that. So that's how we got the 1LT.
That's interesting because I remember.
LT1. Yeah, the LT1.
It's interesting because you said that. Sorry, I was being a dumbass and didn't realize what I was replying to. So don't worry about the private chat part. So, it's funny that you say that because I think about it and I go, that was one of my wife's biggest complaints was there was no power on the passenger side. She loved that. I mean, my wife's a little bit shorter than I am, right? So she would raise the seat up a little bit, but she couldn't do that.
Well, and my mother was the perfect example. She had other old ladies riding with her, and they couldn't see over the windowsills because they sat so low in the car.
Yeah, you did.
So I was
really low in the passenger
to
seat.
say we got to change that. So we changed it, and you could get the passenger power seat on the 2011.
So let me see. Lisa.
Yes. Story of getting in trouble working in the 5th gen because it wasn't approved. Well, it's interesting because I was the unfortunate one that had to write the press release. And I almost lost my job because I added the word hiatus. And I got called into the general manager of Chevrolet's office, and he said, "What the hell were you thinking?" And I said, "Ed, it's easier to use the word hiatus and give them
Something. Yeah.
Because
I remember you telling me this story. Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to get them to buy a Camaro when you don't have to pry the F-150 keys out of their hands.
Right.
So, it's going to make it easier when the car comes back to sell it. So I just, then I got caught working on the car somewhat illegally. And I got called in and said, "You can't talk about a new Camaro because we can't build a new Camaro because the St. Therese plant back in in the early 90s, the province of Quebec got a $300 million. The province of Quebec gave GM a $300 million interest-free loan to redo the body shop if we would give them the rights to build Camaro and Firebird." And here's the little the problem they put in perpetuity. Now, what happened was, looking forward, it did make sense to build a plant that would build 2 shifts of cars.
Right.
Well, after about a year and a half of the 4th gen being out, we dropped it to 1 shift. And that's like opening this big black hole. Right. And when I took over the program, we were losing $100 million a year on just the Camaro.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. Now,
and you guys were building, and you guys were building, I mean, so what are we talking? We're talking 90, we're talking 95, 96 now?
95 program, yeah. That's when we started losing a stupid amount of money on it.
So you're still selling about 50, 60,000 cars a year.
Yeah.
No? Oh, now.
Yeah.
I say that.
No, we were doing 65,000 Camaros a year and another 40,000 Firebirds, but it's on 1 shift instead of 2 shifts.
Right.
Now, here's the good news. When the car went away, it was the Firebird was the 10th most profitable car in the portfolio, and the Camaro was the 12th most profitable car because we were selling a lot of V8s.
Right.
Now, in 99, they came to me and said, "For the year 2000, you're only going to get a V6." And I said, "Close the plant. Yeah. We can't sell V6s. We're losing money on every V6, and the demand is there for V8 engines." And they said, "Well, but we need the V8 engines for other products." Now, I don't know who it was in the corporation that made the decision, but they built a second plant in Mexico to build more LS engines.
Wow.
And so that's how we kept the Camaro Z28 and the SS and the Firebird Trans Am and the Firehawk in production. And those were very profitable for us. We lost money in every V6 we built.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And that was not uncommon back then. Because what you did is you offered, and in fact, it's still that way with Corvette. We offer a Corvette for, I want to say, $69,000.
Right.
We lose money in every one of those, but we make a ton on the option cars. So,
wow. Okay. So, all right. Well, you know what? I'll ask the question. And I already know the answer to this, but I'm asking it for everybody else. And I know that, you've been retired for 6-7 years now, right? But I also know what goes on inside the head of Scott Settlemire. When it comes to Camaros, what's your gut feeling for what 2025 looks like?
I have no idea. I haven't been in product planning meeting since 2000.
No, I know, but do you think this car comes back as an electric car?
Well, I got to think that Mary Barra and Al Oppenheiser and all of those people know a lot more about electric cars than you and I do.
Well, I would
I
hope so.
do worry about the fact that we have no infrastructure to support electric cars at this point.
On both sides of the border.
Yeah.
Right? On both sides of the border, there's such a push on for electric cars, and neither one of us have the infrastructure to
Right.
support, something, a market that's what 3% become 30%. Like that's, take it from 3 to 30%. We don't have the infrastructure. Never mind anything above that.
That's right.
Right. When I just asked because I'll be honest, there is a part of me that's kind of intrigued about what 2025 looks like or whatever, in a sense of, it's worked for Mustang for somewhat, right? But there's a lot of people who are like, nope, I'm done. I'm a little more open-minded. I would say, you know what, if that's where it's at and I want to enjoy, and it looks like something that represents the car that we supported for all these years, that could be put on board. But you know what, like, it's, again, right, like that Mustang Mach-E looks really nothing like the Mustang. They did a fairly good job on it, but it doesn't really look like anything like a Mustang. So, okay, so here's another one I'll fire at you real quick.
Well, and here's the other thing. I'm going to tell you right now. There will not be a two-seater Camaro ever.
Yeah.
Now, ever is a long time, but trust me, we don't need two roadsters.
No.
So
no, you don't have the market to support it, right?
Exactly.
So,
and it's interesting. Before the pandemic, we were still penetrating the market. Camaro was doing about the sport car market is about a 0.6% of the entire market. And it was that way in 1967. And it was that way in 2016 when I retired. Right. So, I mean, the problem is, back then we didn't have SUVs. If I'd have said to you in 1988, 90% of our business will be pickup trucks and SUVs, you would have thought I was out of my mind. And I would have had myself committed because I didn't even see that coming.
Well, we had this problem in 2002.
Yeah.
Right? People were starting with SUVs, right? The Camaro and Firebird get discontinued. And, the SUV market does quite well until the recession hits, and then the bottom falls out of it, right? And then it comes back. So I don't know. I mean, it's a lot different today than it was then, I realize. But okay, so pardon me for repeating. Well, we were vaccinated; it doesn't count. But so, how did the name FBODFATHER happen? How did it come to fruition?
Well, we were at Camaros at Carlisle, and this would have been 1998, and it was ungodly hot. And I had the Camaro Legends tour there, and a lot of the Hudson Valley guys were there. And most of them are Italian, and they have their own little nicknames, like Joey Red and Eddie DeRam. And they all said, "You're our godfather." And I went, okay. And then Joey Red said, "No, you're our FBODFATHER." And so the name stuck. And then they made the little sign that, looks like the Godfather with the hands and stuff. So.
Yeah, it's something that I've been trying to push to the people who are new to the hobby, right? Because we've seen this with the Gen 5 cars, right? There was a lot of people that had no idea that the Camaro existed before 2010, because you know what I mean? Because pre 2010 or 2002, it was an F body, right? I mean, yes, it was a Camaro and Firebird, but it was an F body. 2010 comes, it's a Camaro, and I remember going to, I remember the homecoming event, and we were at the hotel with Hilton's group and that. And we were doing a big thing indoor in the hotel there, and there was a lot of people that were they were from Montreal, and they're like, "What's an F body?" Because they seen the back of our jackets, and it says F body on the logo, right? And they're like, "What's an F body?" I'm like, where are you from? And they're like, "No, we're from Montreal." I'm like, "You're from Montreal and you don't know what an F body is?" And they're like, "No." And we're like, "Wow, okay." So we sat and explained to them. They had no idea the car was built the car was built in Quebec, right? For 10 years to or
For
11
instance,
years at that
the
point, right?
Corvette has always been a Y body. The Caprice and Impala were B bodies.
Yeah.
The Malibu and Monte Carlo were A and A special bodies, and the Camaro happened to be an F body. And that's,
So, and that's the thing so that's where I was alluded to is, I try to push with the new owners that are in the hobby, you know what, learn the history of the car because it's quite exciting. I mean, I grew up with Camaros and I can tell you my parents owned, well, up until I moved out, they had a couple second gens and a third gen. And we had an 84 Z28 with a Recaro limited edition seats in it. It was it was a pretty rare package. I don't remember everything because I was like 14. It was a long time ago, but I distinctly remember that car being brown and tan on the bottom or something. It was an 84 because it had the split speedometer on it, or the double needle speedometer, and it had Recaro going down. Well, later when I finally got into these cars, I realized how rare that car was. It was a pretty rare car. It had a lot of weird options in it, right? So that's what I tell everybody. You know what? Just because you're new to this doesn't, find out the history of what's going on, because you'd be amazed of some of the history and what's been involved in this car to getting it where it is today. It's not just about buying a car off the dealership, right?
So. We have two questions about the Camaro Legends Tour. Team Findlay is asking, is the Camaro Legends Tour still on out on the road? And no, it's not. And then Tracy is asking us, share with us how the Camaro Legends Tour got started. We had a Camaro anniversary tour for the 97 model year. And it was so successful. And of course, right after I took the program over, 3 days after I took the program over, my boss calls me into the office and says, oh, by the way, the car goes away at the end of 98, and we've taken most of your budget. And there's like no advertising budget. There's enough for brochures and a few little things like that.
Right.
So I said, okay, I'm going to have to start supporting the Camaro clubs. So that's how we got involved. In fact, at the time, I was on the internet, but I was Red Planet, and nobody knew what Red Planet was.
Right.
Until I got a private email one night saying, you're Scott Settlemire and you're from Mars, Pennsylvania, and that's why you call yourself Red Planet.
Right.
And I was busted. So anyway, that's it's easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission to do stuff.
It is.
But I don't apologize for going out there and talking to the enthusiasts, because I'm just like every other enthusiast out there. I'm just the lucky son of a gun that got to work on the car that I loved. Anyway, so I decided, okay, when the anniversary tour is over, let's keep doing the Legends tour, because it cost us a couple $100,000, and then I could go out and sell it to other dealerships and stuff if they wanted it for a weekend.
Right.
And so, and then of course I kept six spots open every season to support some of the larger Camaro clubs. And then of course we would send it to some auto shows and the new car auto shows. And I'm kind of a walking encyclopedia, so I didn't have to pay anybody to create anything. I just sat down and wrote the history of Camaro.
Right.
And did all the boards myself, and got approval to give certificates away. If you were going to buy a new Camaro, here's $1,000 to help you go do it. So, so it turned out to be a very, very interesting show, and we had it through 2002.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, we started in 2000, but I was going to auto shows before. There was a bit there where I wasn't because of work and whatnot, but it seemed, there was a lot of great shows down there in the US that we never really got to see up here. But just going back to some of the auto show stuff, I remember the first show that GM sent us one of the PPV cars. There's another acronym for it. Am I using the right acronym? Is it PPV, or I thought it started with a C? What was that?
Captive
What
test
was
fleet.
that ZL1 convertible that you brought down to Fort Erie? Was that was?
Oh, you mean the orange convertible?
No, the black
The
one.
concept car. I'm sorry.
The black one. It was the first. It was the ZL1 convertible before it came out. It was a pre-production car.
Yeah, we call them captive test fleets.
Capital test fleets.
Captive test fleet.
Okay,
CTF. Captive test fleet.
I thought it started with a C, but I couldn't remember. So captive test fleet. Yeah. Okay. So.
Well, but the problem is they were pre-production cars,
right.
the ones that went to auto shows, and we spent a lot of time finessing them so they would look really good. And then most of those cars were scrapped at the proving grounds. So
really, wow.
Oh yeah, we still have the silver concept car, the silver 4th gen concept car, and we still have the orange convertible. It's part of the captive test fleet, or I'm sorry, the Heritage Collection.
Right. I was going to say it's probably at the Heritage Center.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the cars that went to the auto show that we got, those were PPVs, and they were not the same like what you drove down to Fort Erie or drove up to Fort Erie. That was a CTV or CTF.
A captive test fleet, right.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Thor was a captive test fleet vehicle.
Really?
Yeah. And when I turned them in with 17,000 miles on them, they went to the proving grounds, and I assumed it was going to get scrapped. And about a month and a half later, I get a phone call from the proving grounds going, Mr. Settlemire, your Camaro's ready. I went, what Camaro? And they said, your captive test fleet. And I went, oh, can I sell it to my cousin who was a Chevy dealer? And they said, yeah, you whatever you want to do with it. So I actually sold Thor to my cousin, Tom. And he kept it for a while and then sold it to a Melissa. And she and Bud, her husband, lived about 3 miles from my cousin's dealership. And they were very involved in the Camaro Club. Then they got transferred to Phoenix.
Right.
So when I was out in Phoenix 3 or 4 years ago, visiting my cousin Sue, she also owned 25% of the dealership. We met Lisa and her husband for dinner. And she said to me, I think I want to sell Thor. And I'll give you first crack at him. I said, sold. And so I had reliable transportation, go out and pick him up and brought him back. And I had bought a 73 Camaro Type LT, which was just like the first new Camaro I'd owned. And I said to cousin Tom, would you take that and trade? Because in Pennsylvania, you only pay the tax and the difference between the new car and the car you're trading in. So he had the 73 for 2 days and sold it to another Camaro enthusiast. So I was elated to get Thor. And Thor now has about 1,200 signatures under his hood and under his trunk. Because everybody asked me to sign their cars. So I said to the enthusiast, here, sign them and date it.
Yeah, well, I mean, right? I mean, that's just one that you and Mike did for me, but I know you did both of my cars.
Yeah.
You know.
And I'll never forget the first person that asked me to sign their car. I said, you want me to do what? And they said, would you sign my car on the hood? And I went, no, I'll sign it under the hood, because signing it on the hood is going to deface the car.
Right.
Well, that first show, I swear to God, people lined up to get my signature, and Al's and Cheryl's and John's and everybody else involved with the program. So,
well, I mean, that might have been surprising at the time, but I still take a comment. I'll still quote one of your comments that I think I read I forget where it was originally when I seen it. And that was, you guys coming in at the homecoming in the black Suburban, right? And I remember you quoting saying, don't make me get the black Suburban, right? So, I mean, you guys were like celebrities to us, right? We were like,
well, and I actually had GM Creative Services make up the dreaded black Suburban, and I had them printed backwards so I could put it on the hood of the car. So when you looked in the rearview mirror, you could read it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember when Mike Judge first got involved.
Great guy.
You know what? Mike's awesome.
Just an awesome guy.
I was so honored to have you and Mike at our show, honestly. And Mike was like why do you want me at your show? I'm like, dude, man, like, you're like Scott. Your guys are famous, right? So, you know, and of course he, you know, he gracefully accepted, right? And he was there, right? And, you know, but it was everything that Mike and everybody else on that team Oshawa, Team Camaro did, you know. I mean, there was people like, I remember people, you know, send their email, and whoever, I guess it might have been Mike and you or Mike at the time, because Mike was always on Facebook, right? Saying, hey, can you get the guys to autograph my hood cover or my engine cover, right? As it's coming down the line or something. And it was like, and then you got the car and boom, and there was like 50 signatures on it, right? So,
well, and here's the other problem. I had to call the Oshawa plant one day because they would fire people who were talking on the internet and giving away trade secrets.
yeah, it was big. Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched a video about that, how nothing was allowed on the,
right.
in the plant, cell phones, whatever, right? So,
but the problem was Mike, God love him, he actually went out and bought posters and then would have everybody sign them.
Mm-hmm.
And the plant manager was not happy about that. And I said, look, this is a good thing. God forbid we should keep our customers happy and enthusiastic. And I've already reviewed with Mike what you can and can't do. So I finally started providing the posters to Mike because he was spending his own money on them. And I said, that's not necessary. I'll just let me know when you run out. So, and then I'll send you more.
Right. And
by the way, he's now back at Oshawa as a contract employee.
Is he?
We're building vehicles.
Awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we're
because
building Silverados there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you know what? I was so disappointed when I heard that they were closing Oshawa down. And, you know, I thought, you know, after everything that these guys have done, you know, to make Oshawa the name that it had today, right? I mean, years ago, right? I mean, any pickup truck you drove, it come out of Oshawa, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then, whatever happened, you know, so the Camaro comes back and, you know, if you were bought a Camaro, you knew it was being built in Oshawa.
Exactly.
And you knew it was being built with quality. And
and see, that's the problem. I was frustrated because Oshawa was doing a great job quality-wise.
Right.
But at one point, the Canadian Auto Workers Union basically was the highest paid employees in the world. In fact, the reason Holden went away is because they became the high cost producer.
Right.
But I kept saying to management, you get what you pay for. And so now we've opened Oshawa back up again.
Right. So it was good to hear that they, you know, that obviously they put the trucks back in there and whatnot, you know. You know, and I don't know where it was. Oh, I think it was on Facebook or something. And somebody said, well, how do I know where my truck's built? And I said, it's going to either start with a 1, 2, or a 3, right? If it starts with 1, it's built in the US. If it starts with 2, it's built in Canada. And if it starts with 3, it's built in Mexico.
Right.
And they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. I said, yeah, right?
Yeah. VIN numbers tell you an awful lot about the vehicle.
So, and I, you know, when 2014, 15 comes and I thought, okay, you know, 6 gens going to Michigan. I was like, yeah. As much as I didn't want to see it happen, I wasn't surprised because I knew that, you know, that was kind of leading to that because of the union. And
well, here's the other problem. The other problem is, it's the same architecture as the Cadillac CT4 and CT5. So it makes sense to build them all in the same assembly plant. And that's where we were building the CT4 and the CT5. So they're the same architecture. And so it doesn't make sense to keep Oshawa open when we're going to be doing away with a lot of the other products there.
Right. No, it doesn't. And I'm not trying to take away from anybody who builds this car in Michigan. That's not my intention at all. Right. I know that team is just as passionate as Oshawa was. Right. you know, if you work for GM and you build these cars, especially if you get into a program like building vets and building Camaros, where you know that the passion's there for the owner, you take a lot of pride. You'd probably take more pride building a
Yeah.
sports car and a pickup truck than you do an SUV. So, you know, I don't doubt that the quality is any less. I really wasn't surprised because I knew that, okay, now it's Michigan's going to want their piece of the pie now too, because they need it as much as Oshawa needed it at the time, right? So, so we were talking about Mike and Jay. How's it going, Jay? Jay said, I don't know if he meant, I'm sure he meant both of you, but a real legend. So, Jay's a member of the group, and he's got I don't remember what year it was, but I know it's a 15. So, but you know,
By the way, let me show you this.
There you go.
You gave me this in 2012. And here's the other part of it, the FBODFATHER.
That's right. I could have given you the whole screen, buddy. Oh, that's not that one. Let's go with this one. Anyways, yeah, whatever. So, oh, sorry, I lied. Jay's got a 02 SS and a 21 LT1. Apparently, I need to get up to date with Jay's cars. What's the most exciting non-GM event you've attended? You don't have to say mine. Won't take any offense to it. There's got to be a couple of them. I mean, you know, in all the years you've been going to car shows.
Well, I think the homecoming at Oshawa was, you know, we worked so long.
That's true. That wasn't really yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah.
On my way home to Detroit, I went, oh my God, it's over.
Yeah.
And I was so busy and I got no sleep and I didn't have time to enjoy it.
Mm.
The interesting part was seeing it through your eyes. You meaning all of you enthusiasts.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you know, I was going through the plant with you guys and, you know, I always love watching through your eyes. And when I say you, I mean the enthusiast's eyes.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yep.
So yeah, that one, I used to love Carlisle, but you know, they blew it with us. They blew it with the American Camaro Association. And so the American Camaro Association went one way and Carlisle went the other way. And that was one of my biggest disappointments.
Yeah. I
decided I was going to have everybody on a conference call one night. And that was a mistake because you can't have people in Eastern Pennsylvania and some in Carlisle and me in Michigan and all these people on a phone call. What I should have done was I should have flown to Harrisburg, had everybody to dinner, and then said, okay, I'm going to lock the door and nobody gets out of here until you come to an agreement. Right. I made that mistake. But by then it was too late. So.
I never made it to Carlisle.
Well, it was interesting because the American Camaro Association started Camaros at Carlisle. And then Carlisle Productions decided it was going to be GM at Carlisle, which was cool because, of course, you had several hundred Camaros, but you also had several other 100 GM cars. And, you know, for instance, the Eldorado Club would be there and the Chevy Caprice Club would be there. And, you know, you literally got whiplash going, oh. So, you know, that was nice, but, you know, I don't know. I think I'm just going to shut up because I'll be in trouble if I.
Yeah, well, we don't want that, but you know what? And it's not to try and center one out. You know, listen, you've been.
I got to tell you something. I was absolutely embraced by your club and by the Ontario Camaro Club. I mean, I felt like a real rock star when I got there, and that doesn't always happen.
Oh, I find that hard to believe. I bet Mike and Joe at Camaro Fest would definitely argue that one. you were like, I'm pretty sure somewhere in that show they think you walk on water. So, or just a step below that. But, and that's another one that I promised
It's
those
interesting
guys.
because once you retire, it's amazing how many people fall by the wayside.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, it was tough to get you out working. So I can imagine, I don't know if it'd be easier or harder now, but I'm going to
do like 4 or 5 shows this summer. NEOCC, Northeast Ohio Camaro Club. My cousin Tom still does the Tom Henry Racing show. He's going to do it at Cochran Chevrolet, which is not the dealership he sold to. But, Bakerstown, he built a brand new facility. But when you would do a show there, literally, we would run out of room.
Yeah.
So last year, he held it at the Jim Jorky dealership in Murraysville, which has a huge parking lot, and it filled up. So now he's going to do it at Cochran Chevrolet here about 8 miles away, because that's where one of his daughters works, and we'll see what happens. Going to do the Camaro Nationals in Morgantown, Pennsylvania, and a couple others. So,
are you going to Camaro Fest?
No.
Can't make sure. Yeah.
It's the same weekend as another show.
Oh yeah, it's I keep promising. I promise those guys I was going to try and make it one of these years, and it's definitely on my list. It's unfortunately, for one reason or another, I mean, with the exception of the last 4 or 5 years, I've been wanting to get down there. Right? So
the Corvette Museum asked me to be on their board to pick people to become members of the the Lifetime Achievement Award. I can't think of what they call it right now.
Yeah.
I said to them a couple of weeks ago, I don't know that much about Corvettes. I'm really a Camaro guy. So I appreciate the offer, but no, somebody else deserves it more than I do. So
yeah, that would that would be a huge honor, but it's
it was.
Yeah.
But I'd rather turn it over to a Camaro or a Corvette expert.
Right. And somebody did that for you all those years ago and said, hey, we can put you in you can put, whoever in this spot.
Yeah. But
Settlemire, can wind this stuff off with his eyes closed. Right. So, we're just about an hour. You want to keep going, or you want to
go for a little while longer? Yeah.
Okay. So,
by the way, Ken Carr, hello.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to keep up with everything here, but
he went to college with me.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Hey Ken, thanks for joining us.
And I helped get him a Pontiac Cadillac dealership, and he retired and sold it. After he owned it for about 30 years. So
cool. So Jay's got looking back. Would you have used different glue on the T-top roll bar from the 98 to 02?
Well, here's the problem. If enough's good, more is not necessarily better. And the problem is they put too much adhesive on it. And that's why it eats through. And in fact, if you go through the GM Heritage Collection, the few 4th gens that we have in there, they all have the same problem. And there's no way to fix it. You have to replace that entire assembly, the roof band. Because
I didn't know that it was a problem, but
it is. It's a huge problem. And after about 10 years, we decided we weren't going to warrant them anymore, because most cars rust out in 10 years. A Camaro won't, other than the rear quarter panels and the Firebirds.
Interesting. That's I don't know if
we
I ever
spent
did
a stupid amount of money on warranty replacing them for years. Really? And then we just said, no, we're not going to do it anymore.
I know they were a problem.
I pissed off an awful lot of enthusiasts by saying it's been 10 years. No, we're not going to do it under warranty.
Yeah. I mean, I know some of the typical ones. I mean, certainly they were a problem in the 3rd gen, but I don't know that I ever knew they were a problem in the 4th gen.
They weren't in the third gen because the third gen was all metal. The roof band on a fourth gen is it's reaction injection molding.
Sorry,
composite.
I know what piece we're talking about now. Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Sheet molded compound. The front fenders are reaction injection molding. But it's interesting because in a fourth gen, there's 6 different surface materials that we use. In fact, we dropped Sebring Silver in 2001, and we managed to bring it back for 2002. But we couldn't build one for 6 weeks because we couldn't get the paint to match again. The body side moldings would not match the rest of the car. So we finally got that fixed. So
it's amazing when I think about it. I'm like, yeah, I think I remember seeing that. I think I remember like noticing the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I was never on silver for whatever reason. And I don't know what got me onto silver, but I guess when I got that first brochure in 2010, that first Camaro brochure, and it had the silver Camaro on the front.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we bought Kel's new car in 13, somebody said, well, hey, how do you feel about silver? There's one sitting, an hour down the road. I'm like, yeah, I like silver. It seems to be easy to keep clean. It looks good. And so
it's interesting. In 1999, we brought 3 colors into the portfolio because GM has a rule. You're allowed 10 colors and that's it. Mm-hmm. Other than if you do want to do a special edition, you can run that for 4 to 6 months. So we brought in Hugger Orange, which the only time it was Hugger Orange was at 9:30 a.m. in Akron, Ohio. The rest of the time it looked like a creamsicle. And we brought light blue black, and we brought in pewter, which, of course, at the time, we painted every car GM pewter. Guess what the best seller was in 99? Pewter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I let one of those slip between my fingers last year, too. There was a pewter, I don't know, 01 or 2000 on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, it was a weekend car. It wasn't a garage queen or anything. And I think it was $6,000 or something, and I should have scooped it up, and I didn't. It never fails, right? When these deals come up, of course, I never have the money when the deals come up. But when I think, okay, maybe I can make this work. Of course, there's no deals around, right? So, Finley's got my third gen has dimples on the roof corners behind the side windows from all the torque.
Look at the next one. It's a 2.8 liter V6.
Well, there was dimple problems on the 4th gens too, was there not?
Yeah. In fact, if you jump a car pretty hard, it will put dimples in the quarter panels. I know this because I had a B4C at Bowling Green, and I took it to Beach Bend Raceway, and I took off going across a parking lot, and all of a sudden the guy next to me, who of course worked for Beach Bend, is going, no! And I just realized, oh, the pavement ends and then it drops 4 feet and then it keeps going. So I thought, oh, I'm screwed here. So if I turn the wheel, I'm going to flip the car over. Right. So I decided to go over. And of course I crashed down. And I came to a stop, and of course the siren was in the middle of the parking lot because, of course, it was underneath the front fender. And I actually did twist the body a little bit, but I sent it to the proving grounds, and they put it on a jig, and they said, we're surprised it's not totaled. We replaced the front fender, the front fascia, and we, tweaked the car just a little bit to take the dimples out of the rear quarter panels, but it's perfect. So they will take quite a hammering.
It's funny because I remember that having to do so much to the 3rd and 4th gen cars just to try and keep them somewhat from twisting, and yet I never noticed that on the 5th gen cars. Now, yes, I own a V6, but I really couldn't afford a V8, so I'll be honest. It wasn't a real sports car, some people will say, but hey,
but they're a lot of fun.
I surprised a few people with that 3.6, and they were like, "I can't believe there's a 6 in this car." I'm like, you know.
And it's interesting because my mother's 2010 RS has 323 horsepower, which is 2 less than what the 2002 SS had.
Right. So, but so I guess where I was going was I never really noticed the body flex in the 5th gen like I did in the 3rd and the 4th gens.
Well, that's because of the T-roofs. When we designed the 5th gen, the quarter panel starts at the quarter panel, goes up over the window, comes down in the front of the door, and then the whole way back. And the reason we don't put T-roofs in them is because that would ruin the durability of the car. It would severely compromise the structural rigidity of the car. And so people say to me, "Why didn't you put T-roofs in?" I said, "Because we don't want to, because it will." And if you try to do it, you're going to severely compromise the rigidity of the car.
Right. I mean, as it was, you would get cracks at the roof line where the doors were on the hardtops, right? But I think.
Well, the interesting part is on the 4th gen, if you have a non-T-top car, they're not more structurally rigid than a non-T-top car is, because if you take the roof liner out, there's actually the structure to put the T-roofs in it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember seeing that. Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. With the 3rd gens, originally they weren't going to put T-tops in the 350 cars, were they not?
I'm sorry?
I said originally they were not going to put T-tops, or they didn't put T-tops with the 350 cars. Like anything that had a 5.7, they didn't get T-tops.
Yeah, that's not true.
Okay.
No.
That's what I remember.
By the way, Big J asks a question. Scott, is the real horsepower rating of a 2002 SS 350 horsepower under the rating saga? The underrating saga lives on. Yes, interestingly enough, at the time, the only difference between the LS1 and the Corvette and in the Camaro and Firebird is we had to put a truck cam in the Camaro and Firebird LS1 because there was a rule that there had to be a 30 horsepower delta between a Camaro and a Corvette. So we actually had to put a truck cam in the LS1 engine in Camaro and Firebird. And yes, the rating was about 350 to 360.
I remember that question coming up at our 2012 show. That exact question came up at the dinner about.
And we learned early on that there are things called dynamometers. And Ford, unfortunately, found that out real quickly when they lied about the horsepower in the Mustangs. They were advertising a ridiculous horsepower rating, and there was not one built that had that much horsepower. They were substantially less, and Ford had ended up buying a whole bunch of cars back because of that. So we basically, for 25 or 30 years at GM, have said, if we advertise 325 horsepower,
it's a conservative.
You can pull anything off the assembly line, and it's going to be more than that.
Yeah, it's a conservative number. Yeah, yeah. Well, and I know
people ask us about exhaust systems. Interestingly enough, there's a federal law that says you cannot exceed 80 decibels, and there's actually a road test, a drive-by standard, and the federal government comes out to set them up at proving grounds to prove it. Now, at GM, the rule is 78 horsepower or 78 decibels. You have to have a vice president sign off on it. And here's the problem. If one car exceeds that 80 decibel limit, you have to recall out every car and replace the exhaust system, which costs us millions and millions and millions of dollars. So, in fact, there were some trucks that wouldn't pass it because of the aggressive tire treads. It would actually exceed 80 decibels.
So how did you guys get around that with the SLP specialty cars? Was because SLP is a different entity of G.
First of all, you can't buy a loudmouth as a second sticker during the 4th gen cars. You actually had to put that on after it was shipped to the dealer. Now, we got around it on the 6th gen cars because we put a valve system in the exhaust system, and you go in through the radio to change the valving in the exhaust. And to make it louder, it's called off-road.
Gotcha.
So that gets you that really great grumble.
Mm-hmm. God, I was not aware of that. I mean, I knew about the fuel economy standards and all that, but I didn't know about the decibels.
Oh, it's interesting. You know, we were at the proving ground one time working on the 5th gen car, and we were all sitting there with headphones on, and we were tuning exhaust. I said, whoever tells me what we're doing in this picture, I'll send you whatever. I don't remember what it was, but it took 6 pages for somebody to say they're tuning exhausts. And I went, bingo.
Nice. Yeah, I was not aware of that. And it's amazing, you know, after all the conversations we've had, I'm amazed that I still learned something. Not that I still learned something new that I didn't know before. It's like,
I got to tell you something. I walk into one of our assembly plants, and I've spent a lifetime in assembly plants. I'm still amazed. I walk out of the place going, how in the world do we manage to do it? How do we put all those pieces together perfectly?
Right. So
and you can't just go out and buy one of those machines at a Home Depot. They're all hand built.
Right. So what do you think the big lag is, Scott, between, you know, the 6th gen and I'm going to say the 6th gen and the 5th gen, but I mean, I know the 5th gen didn't do great in 15 because it was moving or for whatever the reason. But it seems like the 6th gen numbers have never come close to what the 5th gen numbers were. Oh, it's maybe the first year.
It's interesting. I'll tell you something. I get the question all the time, Scott, what is your favorite Camaro of all time? And my standard response is whatever's coming off the assembly line today, because that is the best Camaro we've ever built.
Right.
And we make running improvements all the time on it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, in the last 2 years has kind of skewed everything for numbers wise.
Oh, yeah.
But,
you know, it's interesting because, you know, one of the reasons the Challenger was outselling Camaro is because they have one hell of a lease program going on.
Yeah.
And I said, wait until they come back off a lease. Chrysler is going to take it in the shorts.
Yeah.
I wasn't counting on a pandemic coming along and prices of used car going up 40%.
Right. Yeah.
So not only did they outsell us, but they're making a lot of money doing it now.
Right.
But I got to tell you something, you know, whoever approved that lease program didn't know that we were going to have a pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so there was a lot of risk there.
Right. And it's like their trucks. I mean, you know what? Some people would say that their trucks are better than a GM or a Ford. I don't know that I agree with it, but you certainly can get them cheaper than GM or Ford. And that's kind of what's helping them leading now. The new truck style, I think, is a lot better than the previous classic style, but I have a few friends that own them and they really like them. They said they're a lot better than what they were, but I think that's another thing, right? I mean, you can buy a pickup truck cheaper than you can buy a GM or a Ford, but it doesn't necessarily make them better, right? I just kind of wondered because personally, and I've kind of made it known, like I'm starting to come around to the 6th gen car, but I think I liked the car earlier on before the mid-generation update come along in 19, right? So the 16 to 18 style, I think I like more, but I just never been a big fan. I'm starting to come back around to it now because I think they look a little better in 21 and 22, but just the numbers have never been there. And I don't know if that's marketing that's not helping that, or it's not just solely marketing. But then you know what, like the last couple of videos we've put out, these guys are amazing. They give us their feedback, right? And a lot of them are stuck in 1100 status, and the sales are there, but because of the pandemic causing the problems that it is,
Yeah.
I think it's going to.
Well, good example. We didn't build a Malibu from February through November because we were saving the computer chips to build our more profitable vehicles.
I was surprised.
Those are by
they're
far
still building Malibus. I thought they were done.
Yeah.
Because you don't see them around, right?
Right.
So, Jay's got the issues with getting a 6th gen. His allocation game some dealers play. People want to buy a car.
Well, that's, the allocation has always been an issue. And it's exacerbated itself by the fact that there's a chip shortage. We have to allocate based on prior sales. It has to be allocated, at least in the United States, that's defensible in court. And so Scott, there's an allocation program.
Sorry, I just want to, I just have to make a quick pit stop.
Oh, okay.
The little boy's room that I've been trying to hold off. So just give me 1 sec. I'm going to put you on the big screen.
Okay.
Somewhere if I can figure out what button it is.
Well, no, you don't have to. You can just go use the can and then.
Okay.
And then
I'll be right back. All right.
Anyway, the allocation game it has to be defensible in court. You have to have an allocation plan. And it's become exacerbated because of the worldwide computer chip shortage. To give you an idea, our 5.3 liter engine in Silverados and Tahoes and Suburbans have cylinder deactivation. We got rid of that because it takes 2 computer chips to cause that to happen. But it cost us over a mile per gallon in the EPA ratings. So, we understand that. And it's just, you'll eventually get your car. Order it. We'll get it built for you. I can't tell you when it's going to get built. But, the allocation will eventually come through. So, and Richard Cedar says, I want to order a 6th gen and can't get allocation, and I work at the dealer. Well, I think we're stopping the 22 allocation April 1st, which is this week. But when you order it as a 2023, you'll get it. Unless you work for a really small dealer. And yeah, is the fuel management system in the 2022 Camaro with an automatic transmission and the V8? Yes, it is. So, I'm just glad that you're all on here, and I'm delighted that you still remember me. I just purchased a 2022 Equinox RS built in the Ingersoll Cami, but missing the heated seats. They promised to chips by summer. Yeah, that's the other way we're saving chips. We'll put them in once the chip shortage gets passed. I can't tell you when that's going to happen. And it's the same thing with heated seats on a lot of our products and cooled seats, because that requires extra chips to do it as well. And yes, Richard, you're in Uniontown, so I understand that. Can't remember what the dealership name is in Uniontown right now, but it's interesting. And there he's back.
Sorry, my apologies. So we live in a century home that we bought a couple years ago, and we completely redid it. But I spent all my money downstairs and didn't spend as much upstairs putting a new bathroom up here. So unfortunately, both bathrooms are downstairs. So yeah.
Yes, it's TriStar Chevy now. You're right.
So I'm just here catching up here. Purchaser. Yeah. So I read somewhere the other day that they didn't list Camaro in that whole SUV thing, but with the heated steering wheel. But the Camaro is going to be part of it. If it's got a heated steering wheel option, it's not going to get it because they're not putting them in SUVs and all that. And like the Traverse and some of the bigger SUVs were like, you're not getting heated steering wheel. So if you got a higher end option Camaro, you can kiss that goodbye for now because they're, I guess they'll retrofit them, but I mean, we're seeing it. We're seeing it with. I'm in the electrical supply business, so we sell generators and stuff, and we're seeing. We're seeing our manufacturers that we're buying from usually come with remote start and all that, right? And I don't want to mention their name. Everybody knows who they are, but it's a big brand, right? But they're retrofitting certain things, and then what they're going to do down the road is they're going to call those customers back, right, and have the service guys go out and put in the whatever part for the Wi-Fi connect, right? They'll go in and they'll come to their house and install it and do all of that once they get caught up with all that, right? So it's affecting everything, it's so it
well, it's a good example. My cousin Tom is going to add on to his garage where he keeps all his cars. They're telling him he can't get windows for another year. So
wow.
Yeah.
And Windows, I don't know if anybody knows this or not, but Windows is it's big margin, big dollar, like big money. There's a lot of markup in Windows. So when they're saying that and it comes to the window business, I mean, those guys are, so I put Lisa's comment up there, and you know what? I never had the opportunity of meeting Becky, but I've heard all kinds of great things about her, and I wish I had the opportunity to meet her.
They made one of her and broke the mold, and we all miss her.
Yeah.
And Joe, her husband, is just, he can't talk without crying.
Yeah.
And she's been gone for over a year.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just, what I wanted to kind of just, give Becky some love and say, you know what, listen, I didn't have the opportunity to meet you, and I wish I had have. But
it's interesting because when I retired, they threw a retirement party for me, and I didn't even know it. They threw a retirement party, and they got me over there. They said, we're just going to have a few people over, so, bring your meatballs. So I took it hook, line, and sinker, and I walk in, there's 200 people there.
Wow.
Yeah. God love them.
Mm-hmm.
Big J asks, Scott, do you know approximately how many 4th gen 2001, 2002 got the LS6 block? They all did. If it's a silver block, it's built in St. Catharines. And if it's a dark gray block, it's built in Mexico. But they're all basically LS6 blocks.
There you go. Something else we didn't know.
Yep.
I'm going backwards, guys. We'll get all three questions here. But Zemiro says, is the LT2 going into the 23 Camaro?
No idea.
Yeah, I've heard that
product planning since 2016.
I've heard rumblings that's what they're talking about doing, but nobody will officially come to the table yet. Unless Scotty can make some phone calls to some of his buddies that are still working and get them on this show. Nobody will come.
One of them has retired.
Yeah, nobody will come to the table and admit it yet. But I would suspect.
Well, and the easiest way to get fired at General Motors is to tell people something that's confidential.
Right.
So when you retire from GM, you don't get any of that insider information. So.
Right. So, and I remember 2012. I threw some pretty heavy questions at you, and you were like, Mark, I can't answer it. Like, I know it's just you and I sitting here having dinner, but I literally cannot answer that question because I can't give you the answer. Mm-hmm. And you were very good at, with a poker face, and I knew you knew, but you're like, Mark, I can't tell you. I'm like, okay. And then, after it was getting close to come out, then you would, when you were allowed to tell everybody, you did.
My cousin Tom and I are very close, but I couldn't even tell him stuff.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I sent a lot of customers to Bakerstown, Pennsylvania, from all over the country to buy, Camaros and Corvettes and Tom Henry racing cars. But there's a lot of things I couldn't tell him or Cousin Sue.
Mm-hmm. So. Maybe, I don't know. Can you talk about any of that 5th gen stuff that we talked about? Not that we talked about.
A good example is we were working on a car called the GMX 200, or the GMX, whatever. Anyway, they gave us the car and they said, this is your next generation Camaro. And we worked on it for about 3 weeks and said, it's not going to be a Camaro because you can't make it into a Camaro because there are so many design things that can't be changed. That car became the Pontiac GTO.
Right.
So.
Okay. Do you think that, where's the dollars got here? Seems like Canadians have a very long time getting their car when ordered. Do you think that any of that allocation is being pushed to the U.S. versus Canada?
It's the same thing is happening in the United States. If you don't believe me, look at Richard Settlemire in Uniontown, Pennsylvania.
I think we have a special guest.
You can't find Camaros right now because we're not building that many of them. That we just came back up online about 3 months ago. So
right, I think we have a special guest come say hi to you.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
Hi there. How are you, cutie?
I'm good. How are you?
Great to see you.
It's good to see you too, love. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
Very much enjoying retirement. I wake up every morning at 5 o'clock, roll over, smile, and go back to sleep.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. I just wanted to pop in and say hello. Hello, everybody.
You said to say hi to you, so.
Oh, you're so sweet.
I think Scott paid more attention to her than he did to me, which was fine. I'm okay with that. But it's like anything I wanted out of Scott, I would just send Kel over to say, "Go ask Scott if he'll do whatever," right? And Kel goes, "Scott, Mark wants." Okay, no problem. Being smaller market, you tend to wonder. I mean, I think it's a valid question. The Canadian and the US thing, but I also realize like production or supply is supply, right? So again, with the generators, and I know with the generators is not General Motors, but the generators, if a hurricane hits or whatever,
I just put one in my mother's house.
All that, and what I will say is because we sell Generac, right? Anytime there's a hurricane,
that's what I put in my mother's house.
Yeah,
I'm still waiting to put the propane in.
Yeah, anytime there's a hurricane down there, we believe, and we don't know this is for real, but I mean, and I guess maybe it should go this way. If a hurricane happens in hurricane season, you can almost guarantee that allocation that was coming north is going to that hurricane hit area because those people need it, right? So, what I think is a valid question. Well, where's the dollars asking? Because being a smaller market, you kind of wonder, like, all right. Limited supply. There's more buyers in the U.S. than there is in Canada, but
but I don't think that's an issue. Like I say, you look at Richard Settlemire, he can't get a Camaro right now, and he's in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. Right. Same thing.
Yeah, and I've kind of said, and I said to these guys in some of my videos, you know what? I realize, guys, that you have your orders in, but if you want to go rely, and some of it is allocation, certainly up here, the bigger dealers will obviously get more allocation than the smaller dealers will. So go talk to some of the bigger dealers and find out, is all their allocation, is it all committed to customers, or do they have open units, right?
Well, good example. When we did the 35th anniversary limited edition Camaro, I basically said, if you sold 4 Camaros in the last year, you get one.
Right.
I had a dealer call me from West Virginia and said, Mr. Settlemire, it's your fault that the Camaro's going away because I have one sold and I can't get one. And I said, and what's the name of your dealership? And what's your phone number, sir? So I said, I'll get back to you. So I called down to distribution, and it turns out he had sold a total of 3 Camaros in 10 years. And I called him and I said, let me tell you something. That kept the plant open for 36 seconds. You don't get one. Click.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know our local dealer here. He's got 2. Well, I guess they would have been 22s. They might be 23s now because of the switchover. But he's got 2 for a spring allocation, which it would have been, they would have ordered him back in the fall, but or Christmas time, and he said they're both already sold. Right now, they've obviously been delayed. They probably will end up being 23s if things don't turn around soon. But so
Big J asks if there was one 90s GM car you could bring back, what would it be? And he mentions it. He says Achieva SCX, TTZ, or Impala SS. Let me tell you something. The Impala SS is a beautiful car. John Moss was able to take one of the world's ugliest cars, the 91 Caprice, and turn it into something absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And my doctor still has the one he bought. It's a 96, black with a gray interior. It has 100,000 miles on it. He's taken it to Florida, and he loves it. And he won't ever get rid of it.
Right. Well, but
that's one of the cars I'd bring back. Although you get into it, and it's like my 2002. They're so primitive because they don't have OnStar. They don't have any of the navigation. They're just awful.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I bought a 73 Camaro Type LT because that was the first new Camaro I bought when I was in college. And it was like the most amazing car. And so I was talking to Jim Hairston one day. We were talking about the first Camaros we've ever had. And I said to him, my first car was a Camaro Type LT because my father wouldn't let me have a Z28 because he knew what was going to happen. And he wanted me to take one of the cars we had in stock. And most of them were 307s with column shifts because whoever was ordering cars at the dealership didn't know what the hell they were doing. And I said, well, how about a Type LT? He says, what's that? And I said, it's a luxurious Camaro. Well, it was chamois, which is the same color as a chamois cloth. I didn't care it was plaid. I was just so happy to have it. But I got to tell you something. I was talking to Jim, and I was describing this car, and he says, my neighbor has a car that sounds just like that. Well, it wasn't my car, but it was a 73 Type LT, chamois, neutral interior, had air conditioning. Mine didn't. 38,000 miles on it. So we agreed on a price. I had reliable carriers go get it. And I got to tell you something. As nice as it was in 73, they were just horrible cars. They were great then, but, they don't have any of the nice stuff that the cars today. And they won't get out of their own way, even with a 350 engine. So, I kept it for a year and a half, and then Thor became available. And I said to cousin Tom, will you take the 73 on trade? And he had it all 2 days and sold it to another Camaro enthusiast who absolutely loves the car. But I'm much happier with Thor.
When I think back, the first Camaro that we had.
Mike Reckling, hello. I worked with Mike years ago in Detroit.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Thanks, Mike, for joining us.
And happy birthday. Happy late birthday.
Oh, yes. Happy birthday. We'll just put her up there. I think the first Camaro I remember, because I was old enough to remember it. We've had it for a while. Was a 72. And I don't remember what motor was in it, but anyway, so I remember us getting rid of that, and then I remember us getting a 76 Type LT. It was funny you said the LT. I'm like, oh god. We had a 76 LT silver. I want to say it had the
Firethorn interior.
No, it was black interior and it had the black half roof on it.
Yep.
Okay. Straight six, 250 straight six with a 3-speed. That car was the biggest piece of junk we ever had because it would keep going through trainings and it kept seeming to blow motors. Now, I was fairly young, didn't know much about cars at the time, and knowing, my mom, she was probably pretty hard on the pedal, but I remember coming back from my grandparents up north, and I remember having to walk like it seemed like forever. It was probably like 2 kilometers, but it seemed like forever because the thing broke down on the side of the road. And I remember a friend of ours had a Type LT, and I instantly went there and went, oh, that thing's a piece of junk. And I was like 12 or whatever. And I'm like, no, this has got the 8 in it. And we're like, oh. And it just seemed like a night and day different car because it had the V8 in it, right? Not that it was that fast, but it was complete opposite of that 256. So Octane Zeta says, Scott, how many Camaros have you owned? I've owned 7.
Well, I had hundreds of company cars. I now have 3. I have my mom's 2010 Inferno Orange RS. I have my captive test fleet, that 2010 RSSS with every option on it, including the Transformers package, which I had put on afterwards. And then I have the 2002 Camaro SS convertible, the Brickyard 400. I had the 73. I had a 74 Type LT, and then several hundred company cars.
I think nobody asked how many I've had, but not that it matters. Well, I the ones that my parents had, obviously don't count because they weren't mine. But in my adult life, I think I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 2010, 86, 91, and there was another one in there. So 4. Mm-hmm. All 3rd gens and a 5th gen. So that's why, somebody was asking me the other day, or we were talking about it in chat on one of the videos, and I said, I'm in between right now, and I don't know what I want. There's a part of me that wants a 5th or a 6th, and then there's a part of me that, I don't think I really want a 3rd. That 91, as much as I loved it, I kind of went overboard on it because once I'd done it and did the suspension and did the paint and did everything on it, I was so afraid of driving it. And then when Dave Connery passed, who airbrushed it, I was really afraid to drive it because if anything ever happened to that car and it would have to be completely redone because nobody could ever match the flame work that he did on it, right? So I never really wanted to drive it. And that was not, I used to daily drive that car. Mm-hmm. So, that was not really the way I wanted it to end. And it rode worse than a Corvette when I was done with it because of the suspension. The suspension was so stiff in it. It literally rode worse than a 77 to 81 Corvette. It was horrible. You would feel every bump on the road, right? But
oh, by the way, I'm going to run and get something. I got a picture I want to show everybody. I'll be right back. Cool.
So I was trying to get Scott to, and I might have missed it when I was in the bathroom, but I know there's a good part of, I want Scott to go over with you guys on some of the 5th gen stuff and the making and all that. And some of the other stories that I had heard that I want him to tell you guys, because it was pretty phenomenal. I was kind of like, that's pretty cool, on how the behind the scenes with the car and all that. So go ahead, Scott.
Mike, you're going to recognize this picture. So we had this thing called the Chevrolet Marketing Center, and we were all district managers, and they brought us all in from.
Sorry, I'm trying to make the screen bigger for you here.
Anyway,
yeah,
those are all real guns. Can you imagine? We actually walked into the GM Technical Center with real guns.
That's crazy.
And because we were the New York Marketing Center, so we pretended we were a bunch of gangsters.
That's cool.
And that's Mikey right there in the glasses.
Awesome.
And that's me.
Huh.
And Jim Jackson lives right around the corner from me. So he was one of the guys in the Marketing Center with us.
Cool. So I was just telling the guys that how much of the 5th gen stuff can you tell? Can you tell any of it?
Specifically?
Sure.
Well, what's your question?
I guess, just about, okay, so the O2 goes away and the coming of the 5th gen and all the hype behind it, and how you had to beat people off with a stick because.
Well, I got to tell you something. when we built the first 4 or 5 cars, they look exactly like the concept car. And that had never happened at GM other than with the SSR. And I mean, I'll never forget, we had invited all the 15 disciples out to the proving grounds several different times. But I had taken them out there the first time and said, you know, we're going to be good. We're going to drive some Corvettes. I brought all these Corvettes out. And of course, I had an Alpha model, which was all heavily camouflaged. We brought them out to Black Lake, which is part of the 5,000 acres at the proving grounds. And it's 53 acres of asphalt, perfectly flat.
Is that the one that we had at the homecoming?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, this was in Milford.
Yeah, but the car that was at the homecoming, that camouflage car, was that the one you were talking? The camouflage
there
car.
Were a whole bunch of those, but
okay.
We don't know that it was that particular. I think this one was a V8. That one was a V6.
Oh, okay.
But I had it like fly past the bus with all the disciples on. Of course, they're Google-eyed. So we had a meeting for a couple hours, and we had the room divided with a black divider. And I said, now we're going to go out and drive some Corvettes. And so we walked around the divider, and there are 4 production intent Camaros. And I mean, they literally didn't say anything. And several of them broke into tears.
I think I've seen some of those videos introducing that car at the proving grounds.
Yeah.
That's
but it
cool.
was one of the greatest experiences of my career because, again, I got to watch through enthusiasts' eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So
a lot of people have said to me, why is the 6th gen so close to the 5th gen? I know that the 6th gen was really meant to be an improvement over the 5th gen, but I guess a lot of people were surprised because they look so much alike.
You don't want to screw up a good thing.
Right.
People say to me, well, the car should have been more retro. Well, you know, the Challenger was very retro, and we outsold it for the first 5 years of production.
Yeah.
Now, the reason Challenger is outselling us now is because they have amazing lease prices on the cars. So, and it's bigger. It's bigger. It's based off the Chrysler 300. So it's substantially bigger than a Camaro.
Right. Tracy says, do you ever think they will bring back the cool purple pearl metallic? That was a 1-year car.
I'll never say, well, it was 2 years, but
2 years.
I don't know. I don't know. I doubt that it's going to come back because we bring colors back, but they're not exactly the same. Purple pearl, you know, it's a strange color. I love it, but it wasn't everybody's favorite.
That's a rare car. If you can get your hands on one of those purple pearl cars, Camaro or Firebird, that's a rare car. I was looking that up, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. But I think it's, you know, it's funny because the gold, remember the gold?
The sport gold?
Yeah, the 98, right?
Yeah, sport gold.
I think all the polls about, you know, how well it was going to do didn't do that well, and I don't know what the build numbers weren't high that I can remember of, and you would know better obviously than I would how they actually did, but they seemed to do better once it was gone.
Here's the problem: GM has a rule: if you fall below 3%, you have a 60-day warning, and you have to get the number above 3%. And the reason you have to get up above 3% is because the paint deteriorates in the vat. And that's a quality issue. Right. And for instance, aqua blue metallic in the 2010 model year, we got the 3% warning, and the actual prices went down, or the actual volume went down after that.
Right.
So,
and I guess, you know, same as that first year 2010 aqua blue.
Yes.
That aqua blue, nobody wanted it. Not nobody. the numbers were really low for the people who wanted that color when it was out. But as soon as that car was gone, everybody wanted that color.
Oh, sure.
Right.
And in fact, when we picked the colors, I got a cute story for you. We called that, "This is not my sister's Camaro blue."
It's an actually, like, I think one of the first PPV cars that I drove was that color. And then there was that one. And there was another time it was that dark blue metallic.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've always liked the dark blue metallic, even from the 4th Gen days.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to the Nationals, and this guy, Chris, that was there, had a dark blue metallic. I think it was a 99.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I love that car. That car's awesome. But just in that color, right? So,
funny story. Baby blue metallic.
Yeah. So when I see my Avalanche is something close to that color. It's that dark blue metallic, or whatever it's called. And it was like, when I seen it, I was like, you know what? Everybody's got red and black. And when I seen that one, I was like, yeah, oh, there you go. So,
here's an interesting one. Sunset orange metallic on an Avalanche is not the same color as the sunset orange metallic on a Camaro. They're about 2 shades off.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. I thought they were the same color.
Nope. They look the same, but if you put one next to the other one and you're a color expert, you can see the difference.
Well, they say most of us men are colorblind, so we wouldn't notice it anyways. But
well, it's interesting because at GM, to be a color expert, you actually have to go through this test. There are a total of 600 different checkers, 15 of them at a time, that go from blue to purple, purple to blue. Anyway, if you miss more than 10 of them out of the 600, you can't pick colors. I only missed 2. I thought I was colorblind, but it turns out I'm a color expert. So
Benny doesn't want GM to make an electric Camaro. We could vaguely went there, Benny, and yeah, I don't think there's a lot of people in this video, in this chat, that are big fans of it. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of open to it, but I think I'm of the minority. Not that I want the ICE Camaro to go away. I don't. But if I had to pick one and my only option was electric or nothing, I think I would probably take the electric. But where's the dollars got? OV is a hot color. Again, a couple of videos that we've gone through in the last month or so and getting a lot of feedback. These guys are awesome. Is that
what is OV?
That's that orange, velvet orange metallic.
Velvet orange metallic.
Or not. Sorry, help me out here. I think he may be talking about something different. That new orange that's on the 22s.
Oh yeah,
right.
Mm-hmm.
I think Versa Dollar might be talking about something different than I am, but that maybe not. It's a late night. I've been up early. That new orange seems to be getting popular. A lot of guys gotten their feedback like, yeah, I've ordered that orange, and they tried to talk me into going red or another color. So we're trying to figure out, is there burnt orange? Yeah. It's like it's a vivid orange. That's it. Vivid. I'm sorry. Vivid orange. It's the guys have said they tried to talk me into going red. When they called to get a follow up on their build status, right? So I think it was the same way with the 4th Gen, right? Some of these colors didn't do well in the beginning, like the sunset, but then all of a sudden, once it's gone, all of a sudden the demand for it gets a lot, which is, it is what it is. But
well, like I said, bright blue metallic in '99, it didn't last 6 months,
right?
And yet pewter was our number 1 color that year.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So Big J's got, was there ever a thought of a digital dash on the 5th gens?
No. We wanted to go retro.
There's a digital dash there, Jay. You got to set the setting on it, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean. You know what? It's funny because I mean, the technology is great. My father has an F-150, and I never thought that I would say that I love the new F-150, but I drove that truck. And for him, it was about easy to get into. And we looked at a GM because I was pushing them GM. And they didn't have a holy shit handle on the driver's side until the new body style that's out today, right? Well, the previous body style until 18 or 19, whatever it was, right? The square one didn't have holy shit handles until you got to a 2500. So he went body used Ford F-150, really loves it. Well, 8 months ago, the part of the ECM goes on him, and the center digital part between the speedometer and the tachometer goes blank. And it cost him $2,000 for a reused one.
It's not a cheap date when a digital dash breaks.
No, it's not. And it never has been. I mean, I remember back in the Berlinetta days, once those Berlinettas started to get long in the tooth, it was expensive replacing them dashes, right?
Exactly.
Now, there wasn't many of them. There wasn't many that. Well, you would know better than this than I would. I don't think there was that many of the digital dash Berlinettas built. Was there?
No, there wasn't.
Was it under 10,000?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was. It was probably low, a couple thousand.
Now, when I say that, I don't know. Somebody's going to challenge me on that, and I don't know because I don't recall Beretta numbers. So,
but I do remember those getting long in the tooth, and then dashes starting to go. Well, obviously 10, 15, 20 years down the road. Good luck trying to replace them. So
exactly.
And now nothing's built like it. Some say it's planned obsolescence. Some say it's just not built the way they used to be. That truck's 6 years old.
I like to say we don't build them the way we used to. Thank God.
Yeah.
So,
well, in some things,
when we were doing the Legends tour, Chevy dealer in Las Vegas, Greg Heinrich at Fairway Chevy, and this 78 Camaro lands, and it's an unassuming car. It's a 352 barrel, air conditioned AM radio. But it had 2 million across the windshield.
Right.
And it came out of the Van Nuys plant. And he calls the plant and says, "Is this the 2 millionth Camaro built?" "Yeah, it is." "Well, it's in his collection. It has 200 miles on it." So I said to him, "We would like to borrow that car for the Legends tour."
Right.
What a piece of shit.
Really, eh?
Oh, the build quality was horrible. Thank God we don't build them the way we used to.
Well, and not all the third gens were like that, though. Is it just a Van Nuys thing, or is it because they were built in 3 plants or something, 2 plants?
No, we built them in. Well, there was a third plant that built Camaros in the first gen. Lordstown built all the Firebirds, and then we had Norwood and we had Van Nuys. But back then, I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, the reason we're in the trouble we are in today is because the quality was so bad back in the 70s that when you delivered a car, you'd say to the customer, "Just keep a pad and bring it back at 1,000 miles, and we'll fix whatever's wrong with it." And it was not uncommon to get 1 or 2 pages of things wrong with a car.
Wow.
Well, anyway, we're going on 2 hours. So
yes, we are.
More
it's
questions.
Almost your bedtime.
Yeah.
It's almost your bedtime.
Anybody else have a question they want to ask? We'll take one more.
Last call. One more question. I promise it'll be, less than 10 years before I get him back here. But
I just like to say to all of you, I appreciate the enthusiasm that you've got for the product. We're so blessed to have every one of you, and you're really our historians. Scott, when are you coming to Canada? I have no plans to right now. So, and will you promise to run for president? You couldn't pay me enough money to be a president.
Yeah, the money's not that great.
Exactly.
Not for the BS you have to put up with.
Yeah.
You know what? I honestly, I think for me, I want to get past this pandemic. Yes, we're getting back to normal, but let's get this behind us where we can, get together again, and hopefully, Scotty, we can have you up here. It's always good to see you. If I have to come to Oakville to see you, I have no problem doing it. It has been way too long since we've, thank God we have this, but it's been way too long. It's hard to believe it's been almost 10 years.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Before we go, I don't know. I know we tried to get you out for that Icons exhibit in 2011. That was prior to our show, but I don't know why you couldn't make it, because that was such a huge thing that, I forget why. I think you were at an auto show or something. That's why you couldn't make it to that one.
Most likely that's the reason.
Yeah. Because I'm sitting here thinking, I know we tried to invite you for that, and that was 14 days and all that. And, you were probably knee deep somewhere else. So, but it's always, it's always good to see you. I really appreciate you doing this for me and for everybody here. Been a long time. It's good to see you're doing well. Please give Mama Settlemire our best from all of us.
Okay. Will do.
And we will
she
talk.
Turned 97 in December.
Well,
she has her good days and she has her bad days. So
God bless her. So
yeah.
All right,
everybody, thanks. I'm going to take off.
Happy Veterans Day to our friends, our Vietnam vets today.
Yeah.
Sorry, I grabbed that earlier. So thank you for all those that did what they did for all of us that many years ago. And we will cut her off here, and we'll talk soon.
See you later.
Take care, guys.